Hello, welcome to Hamstring Havoc Day 2. Today we're going to check back in with your pelvis using a couple of different tools. I'm going to give you one progression as well for that pelvic tilt. And then we're going to work a little bit more compression. So we're going to keep it at sort of the fundamentals because if you are really locked down, these are the diagnostic tools to assess, and also these are the tools to begin to unlock some of the precursor pieces to accessing your hamstrings with greater sophistication, where you'll actually get somewhere instead of just cranking on the same tissue over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Okay, so first we're going to start with nerve slides and glides for that sciatic nerve. You do not have to have your legs all the way straight. If you need to have a bend in your legs, you can do this with something supporting the back of your legs. You can do this sitting on the edge of a seat. You can even do this from standing. You can just search those for expediency. We're going to keep it on the floor for now, and I'm just going to remove my prop, and we're going to get to it. Okay? Start with your ankles dorsiflex. Your toes are pointing up. Your hands can be anywhere that are going to support you. If you are really locked down, having something behind your low back to support you will also help. Because for me, like, I'm in a shape that a lot of people can't even get to. That you're way back here. Okay, so I'll pretend like I'm here too. With your ankles dorsiflexed, you'll lift your chin up, and then you'll point your toes and drop your chin down. And you'll go back and forth between those two shapes. And you're going to let that nerve, that sciatic nerve, just kind of be flossed through the nerve channel. That's what you're doing here. That's the function. Okay? Next, you want to put that a little bit under tension to stretch it out a little bit. So with your ankles dorsiflexed, you're just going to drop your chin down. And this is where you'll start to feel, for most people, a little or a lot of stretching, a lot of sensation, especially if you're very tight. You don't want to go to where you immediately want to tap out. You're just here for a little bit, and then you can come back to the slides and glides. Now, like I said, you can do this from sitting on the floor. You can do this from standing with one leg propped up. You can do this from sitting on a chair. You can also do this laying on your back, which is a nice accessible option for a lot of people from your back. Right? Heel in. You can support the back of your leg. If you don't have a lot of hip flexion, that right there is an indicator. We'll talk about that in a moment. But let's say you're out here with it. Heel in to butt as much as you can. And up, right? Up. Ankle dorsiflex. Down, ankle dorsiflexed. Pointed toes. Up, right? Flex down. Point the toes up. Flex the foot down. Point up, flex down. Point up, flex down. And you can do that fluidly, or you can do it as piecemeal as you need to. Okay, so I'm on my back, so I'll just go ahead and stay here while we're at it. No, I'm going to come up. I'm lying. All right, coming up, because I want to show you another thing from the seated position before I show you on a surface. I think it will make more sense here. It tends to make more sense in classes when I do it this way. It said, you want to take your hands and apply pressure into the midline, palm to palm on purpose, pressing into each other. Create tension in the upper body and flex, dorsiflex, right? Turn your quads on as much as they will go. From here, you're going to scoot one butt cheek back, and then you're going to scoot the other butt cheek back. And if you'll notice, I'm not bending my knee to do that. I'm keeping the tension here. Scoot, scoot. Now what's happening is I'm plugging my femur into the hip capsule, ascending the femur, right? Up into the hip capsule, up into the hip capsule. up into the hip capsule. So you want to do about 10 of those. And that's kind of what that's doing, is it's making sure that you are plugged in, that this bone is fully situated up in your joint, and that instability and positioning is not a factor in whether or not you're able to access the lengthening of your hamstrings. There's more than one way to do all the things pretty much that we're attempting to do here. So let me go ahead and show you another way of doing this. It's going to segue into some pelvic tilt again. Okay, so you come down onto your back, you set yourself up so that your feet are up against a surface and you have a dorsiflex ankle, so 90-degree angle, a 90-degree angle, and a 90-degree angle. Okay? A nice tool to use is to put a block or a foam roller between your thighs. This one is pretty heavy, so I'm going to hold it a little bit. All right? And press into your heels, press into your shoulders, scoop your tailbone underneath you, and then from here, you're going to try to roll about an inch and then an inch, so that you're switching what femur is more plugged in to your hip capsule. That stretches some of the muscles in the pelvic floor, and it again accentuates that femoral ascension. You're plugging the ball into the capsule of the ball and socket joint there. Okay? From this bridge shape, you can also work on your pelvic tilt. With the weight in your heels and you're activating the back of your legs, you work on scooping underneath and then just relax to neutral. Scoop underneath, right? Rounded, tucked tailbone, that posterior tilt, and then back to neutral. 10 times or so. And then you can, if you're stuck in that tucked under position, from here, you can work to accentuate by deepening the hip crease. Deepen the hip crease and you'll feel the low back lift up. You can always keep a hand there. Deepen the hip crease, you'll feel the low back lift up. Right? Neutral, anterior tilt. Neutral, anterior tilt. In that neutral position, it's not like there's no gap whatsoever. When I posterior tilt, there is no gap whatsoever. Anterior tilt, deepening of that hip crease, lift of the low back, driven by this pelvic shape. So this is another good position where you can practice that anterior and posterior pelvic tilt that is essential to be able to harness. I'm going to come back up to sitting for a second. This is what I mean. If you're stuck in posterior tilt, then you cannot access this hip hinge. It's going to be a lot harder to go forward because gravity is wanting to pull you back that way. Your center of mass is behind this fulcrum, right, at your hip. So you want to go back this way, when really, to stretch your hamstrings, you want to go forward. It's really essential. So let's start with that compression again, okay? So if you're tight in your hamstrings, it's going to be hard to shorten them to a certain degree. And if your hip flexors are part of that issue, you're going to start to see it when you pull your knee into your chest. Laying down is one thing. Let's look at it from sitting up first. Okay? You're going to start to bend your thigh up, and if you can't get contact between the entirety of your thigh and your chest, then your hip flexors are probably a part of the issue. But we're just going to work with what you have. So you can put it down on the floor so you don't have to hold it. Pull your heel in, just to where you have some tactile feedback to pull against. All right, and then slide it out. It's like a little narrow for some people. Let me find a book. Here's a book. All right. Against the book. Squeeze and then relax. 1 1000, 2 1000, and then relax. Yoga block would also work. 1 1000, 2 1000, relax. The other way you can do it is you can pull it into about where your limit is and then pull with your hands and push backward like you're opening up against your hands and then pull in a little closer. Pull, tug of war, and then relax. Tug of war, and then relax. So you can either pull against resistance, that's this one, pull against resistance, and then relax. Or you can push against resistance and relax, push against resistance and relax. And of course you can do this laying down as well. Lay on your back. You want your thigh all the way into your chest. For a lot of people, they go long with the leg, right? But this is just getting into the hip flexor on the straight leg. If your hip flexor is one of your limiting factors, then you might want to do a few rounds of this where first time you're stretching the psoas, right? Stretching the front of the long leg. And then once it's stretched, you can focus on the bent leg. And when you're focusing on the bent leg, maybe you take the second leg out of the equation by bending it and planting it down into the ground on purpose. Right? Maybe your knee doesn't go as close to your chest as mine does. If you're out here with it, resist and then relax. Resist and then relax. You can push into resistance and then relax. Push into resistance and relax. You can support the back of the hamstring, push into it and relax. Push into it and relax, and you can pull into the hamstring, kick long, and pull the heel down and work that actively. But once you've done all the various contracting and relaxing as you're pulling your knee into your chest, you're going to stay with it, with your knee into your chest and your heel to your butt as close as you can get it, and then hang out. Whether your free leg is bent or straight, it doesn't matter. You're going to hold this. So just like before, you kind of set the stage with the pelvic tilt and your nerves, and making sure that the sciatic nerve is ready to play ball. Then you activate through either shortening or lengthening or a combination of the two, and then you're going to sit with that compression. Okay? That's the format. That's day 2.